What is somatic processing and how can it help you daily is the topic of this video. I'm Helen from Creating Shifts with Helen, which is all about getting to the bottom of what's keeping you stuck and holding you back and shifting it so that you can make the changes you've been craving, live the life you want, move from surviving to thriving. So let's start with what is somatic processing. It's basically, in simple terms, using the body as a tool to process through things, to process through things we've experienced, held on to. It's using the body and acknowledging that we can't just work with the mind when we want to make changes. We have to incorporate the body too. Somatic processing is big in trauma-informed practices, so somatic experiencing, EMDR, dance and movement therapy, they all use the body to process through trauma. They're all trauma related, and there's a lot of research showing the efficacy, the effectiveness of using these approaches, including the body, in those types of therapies. But it's not just useful for trauma. We know that emotions are not just felt by the body, they're actually held in the body. So we don't just feel emotions in our body, we actually hold them in our body. We know that cognition and thinking doesn't just happen in the mind. We know that sensory motor systems are involved. So again, cognition and thinking occurs in the body. We also know the body can hold on to things and they can get stuck. So we can get emotions, cognition stuck in our body. And the mind and body are inseparable. That's what we're discovering more and more through the research. They're so interconnected, we can't separate them, and we really do need to be using the body when we're looking at healing or changing or moving our emotions, dealing with them, and so forth. So when you have an argument with your spouse, or when your child comes home half an hour late and you spend that half an hour frantically worried, frantically panicking, well, maybe mildly panicking to start off, but when those sorts of things happen, the emotions we have and the cognitive process can actually get stuck in our body. Same if we have news that a loved one has got some sort of illness, or even ourselves has some sort of illness. So every time we have an emotion, which is often, if we're unable to process it there and then, which we often don't have the time or capacity, or it's not what's the word I'm looking for? It's not practical to process the emotions in that space at that time. Same if something happens in work, often we will just put on a brave face, a brave front, and get through it, and we don't process what's happening to us at that time. So we can get things, the body will hold on to that, and it can all get stuck. And what's the outcome of that? Well, if that's happening, we can have all sorts of symptoms. We can have sleeplessness, we can feel a level of anxiety, we can go into low mood, even depression if this is happening and has been happening for a long time. We can also experience comfort eating because we haven't been processing things. We look to food for comfort or spending money for comfort. There's lots of symptoms that we can experience because we haven't been processing our emotions and our cognitions, and we're holding on to them in our body. And that's where somatic processing in day-to-day life can be so valuable. We can use somatic processing using the body to process through the things that we have been holding on to or that we've repressed, and we can use the body to move them out, release them, so that we can move forward from them. And that's the focus of my programs and my sessions. I use tools from cognitive behavioural therapy and quantum energy healing to help you to unearth and identify and start to shift those things that you've been holding on to or repressing. We start to move them with those tools, and then we use inspired dance as somatic processing for the body to process and move everything, get everything flowing so that you're no longer stuck. And that's why I dance in my videos. I like to give people just a taster of what somatic processing is, inspired dance is, because people will tend to hear the word dance and think of what they see on the telly, the very formal, structured, learnt forms of dance. But somatic processing in the form of inspired dance is just using the body how it feels inspired to move. So, yeah, the somatic processing in the form of dance is something that can be utilised and provides wonderful results. I have a challenge, a free 3-day challenge coming up soon, so you can keep an eye on my social media for that. My handle is Creating Shifts with Helen, or you can get on my waitlist at www.creatingshiftswithhelen and find the waitlist there so that you're the first to hear about that. And you can use somatic, you can try out the somatic processing in the form of inspired dance for yourself. An example where I've used it quite recently is I got into a mindset of just how would I put it? I kept saying to myself when I needed to do things, I can't be bothered, when it was something that I knew was going to move me on. Like, for example, in my business, I was just telling myself, I can't be bothered. And the wonder of inspired dance is that as I was processing that and moving through that, I had the inspiration that underneath it was, although I'm saying to myself I can't be bothered, underneath it is there's no point because things don't work because of, past failures, which we all have. And getting to that point, it was then easier to process it and move it out and release it and let it go from my system so that it no longer impacted me. And that's the real magic of inspired dance. It really can help us to get to the bottom of what is underneath the things that are keeping us stuck, and then we can process it and shift it and move it on so that we can live our life the way we want to, rather than being trapped by those things that we've been holding on to. I'd love to hear your comments underneath this, and what your experiences are of any of the somatic processing tools. And yeah, keep an eye out for my free 3-day challenge, which is coming up within the next few months, so that you can try it out for yourself. Thanks for watching.